Shalom Aleichem and Shavua Tov. We begin with the study of Pirkei Avot, and of course we're going to begin chapter 3 and Mishna Aleph, first Mishnah. Akavya ben Mahalalel Omer. There was a great sage who lived long time ago, before the destruction of the second temple. He was in the time of Hillel Hazaken, and he was known as a great man of righteousness and purity. And he tells us, what does he say? Histakel bislosha devarim, ve'en ata ba lidei avera. Ponder upon three things, and he will not come into committing a sin. He is going to tell us three ways how to avoid the possibility of committing sins. He begins by the word histakel. What is the meaning of histakel? Usually histakel means to see closely, to see clearly. Here it means to ponder, which means to look upon things, upon the world with depth. I read that the Sfat Emet alav Shalom explains that there is a difference between histakel and da. Histakel and da'at. To know means da'. Lehistakel means to ponder, to look and to try to understand, but with depth. So he says, the Sfat Emet says that histakel is when you work upon something. Let's take for example, to look upon nature and to see how nature works, and to ponder upon it, which means to ask questions. Is it possible that this kind of beautiful nature can be just without any creator? It's impossible. Everything that it has is with intelligence, with a motif, with a plan and purpose. Everything. It takes a lot of time. Maybe it takes a lifetime to understand what is the meaning of histakel, which means to look properly upon things by trying to bring into your heart the understanding of what's going on in the world. That's as much as I can say about histakel. So he says, if we ponder upon three things, the following, then we have a guarantee we will not commit a sin. Number one, da me'ayin bata. You should know where you come from. Now he says da. Da means to know. What is the difference between histakel and da? We already explained what is histakel. Da means just plain knowledge. Do you know where you come from? Does not mean which city you come from or which country. It means the way you are. You are a human being. What made you become a human being? You were created, of course, from Adam Arishon, who was practically created by God himself from the earth. So we come from the earth. That's a common knowledge that everyone, just by using a little bit of thinking, he would know. But remember, it has to be after histakel, which means go in depth into it. Why were we created with earth? And the second thing that he says is ule'an ata holech. You have to know, da. Le'an ata holech. Where are you going? Now, of course, it does not mean where are you going. We all go everywhere, every day. But at the end of life, where do we go? there is only one place that contains our body. That's where we're going, and that's the grave. And the grave is earth, right? So we come from earth, and we go at the end to earth. There is another piece of knowledge that we should know. And all this is a common knowledge, right? Everyone agrees. The third thing requires a little more thinking, a little more faith. But after the proper histaklut, after the proper understanding with depth, as we have explained before, it's possible to understand also and to know very well the third saying of Akavya, the son of Mahalalel. ולפני מי אתה עתיד ליתן דין וחשבון. And after we go into the grave, what happens then? It's not the end. Then you should know before whom we are going to appear and give the account for every deed that we have committed. Right? So first, the first question was, where did you come from? We all come from earth, right? But think a little more than that, because the answer is not exactly only from earth. From earth was the first Adam. But we, after Adam, the second one who was born from our mother Chava, from a drop, from sperm, that the male, the man, when he came together with his wife, then that little liquid, which is putrid, right? Doesn't have good taste. And yet it's called tippa seruha, a putrid drop. That's where we come from. That's exactly how we are born. Of course, God does the machinery, the whole thing, the process. How do you have a baby inside the womb of his mother? That little drop progresses, it becomes bigger, it takes a certain shape, little by little, until it forms totally the body of a human being inside the womb of his mother. And then after 9 months, we are born. So you should ponder upon those things. But at least you should know that that's how we come from. Why is it necessary that we should know that we come from such a drop? Or let's ask a better question. Couldn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the master of the universe, who created so many marvels in the world, couldn't he find a better way how to make us come to this world rather than from a drop of liquid that is putrid? Our sages provide us with the answer. The answer is this: this is the lowliest kind of source. And that teaches us a big lesson. It teaches us that remember who you are. In fact, we come from almost nothing. Therefore, this should prevent us from bringing ourselves into haughtiness, what we call in Hebrew ga'ava, right? By the way, that's the worst of all traits of character, is to think that you are better than anyone. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, even our master Moses, who spoke with God face to face, he himself considered himself lower than anyone on earth. So, the same way we should also regard ourselves. If we think we are higher than anyone, just remember where you come from. And all of us come from the same source, from the same kind of drop. Therefore, this should completely bear away from our heart any trace of haughtiness, of arrogance. Because arrogance is the cause of many, many bad things. And the most important of them, that's exactly what causes us to deny the existence of God. Many times, a guy who is full of gava, of conceit and arrogance, He thinks that there's no one higher than him, not even God. So little by little he doesn't believe in God really. Even if he says, I believe in God, he truly does not believe. Therefore our sages wrote so much against this trait of character, because this is the character that causes rift and quarrels and destruction and everything. By remembering, by knowing that we come from such a source, this should minimize our feeling of arrogance, right? And the second thing, we ask the question, Ule'an ata holech? Where do you go? So the answer is evident. Limkom afar rimma vetole'a, to a place of dust and worms. The dust is the earth. After a while, the body in the grave is eaten by worms. So if you think you are of any great importance above anyone else, all you have to do is to think about those two things. Those two pieces of knowledge are enough for us to eliminate any kind of arrogance. And the third one, which is the most important, the question was, before whom do we appear at the end, in the future, which means after this life? We are going to appear before someone. Before whom? And we are going to give the account for everything that we have committed, for which we did not repent, for which we did not change ourselves, and we died with it, that we will have to give the account for it. Before whom? Lifnei melech malchei melachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Before the King of Kings, God blessed is He. Those are the words of Akavia ben Ma'alalel. And this man walked by this kind of words that he told us, the kind of words that are eternal. Second Mishnah. Rabbi Chanina Segan HaKohanim Omer. We have another rabbi here from the very old, long time ago, also before the destruction of the second temple, in the third generation of the sages of the Mishnah. Rabbi Chanina Segan HaKohanim. Segan HaKohanim means that he is the second in importance to the high priest, who of course worked in the temple of God in Beit HaMikdash that King Solomon built, and that we find that Rabbi Chanina was also a Kohen, but he was second to the high priest. He was also one of the greatest sages that we have in the Talmud, such as if you study Masechet Psachim, you will find that one of the hardest Talmudic sections are from Rabbi Chanina Segan HaKohanim. He said, at the time there were many persecutions, Roman persecutions against the Jews. So it was not easy to find a Jew who feels good about Rome and Romans, right? They did suffer so much. But he does advise, Heve mitpalel bishlomah shel malchut. Pray always for the sake of authorities, of the authorities. In his time it was Roman authority. What do you mean to pray for them? He says it's better to pray for them. We need an authority of this kind. Even though they are our enemies, and even though they persecuted us very much, but they are important. In what? In which way? She'ilmale mora'ah, ish et re'ehu hayim bela'u. Because if it was not for the fear that one feels towards the authorities, in his case the Roman authorities, people have the tendency by nature to swallow each other. Which means when there is no justice, there is no law, and the place becomes mamash, anything you want to do it. So people will kill each other. So when you have authorities, even though we have suffered from them, they will do a lot to stop any crime or anything that goes between one and another. That's by the way, it's an advice that's important to know, that God knows what He does. Even though there is suffering, but there is also a blessing. By the way, there is a certain Talmudic story in Masechet Shabbat where we find that there were 3 rabbis who were discussing the actions of Rome. So the first one was Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda spoke nice about the Roman government. He said they built many things. They built beautiful cities, beautiful bridges, and everything is for the betterness of people, the Jewish population. They also benefited from that. Rabbi Yossi was the second rabbi, but he didn't say anything. He didn't say nor good nor bad, nothing. Rabbi Shimon, the famed Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, spoke negatively against the Roman government. He said, whatever they do for their own interest, because whatever they did, if they built bridges, it was only so that they can charge us with customs, and also because of lewdness and prostitution, and because of them there is that our Judaism has been contaminated, and so forth. This dialogue between those 3 great rabbis came to the ears of Romans, and it came finally to the ears of the king himself, of Caesar. So finally what happened was, Rabbi Yehuda, who spoke nice about the Roman government, became so important in the eyes of the Romans that they appointed him to be, whenever there is a reunion between the rabbis, when they have to make a speech, always Rabbi Yehuda will be the first one to speak. He is known as Rosh Hamdabrim Bechol Makom, the head of all the speakers. Rabbi Yossi, who didn't say anything, was exiled. He was expelled to, let's say, to a small city called Tzipori. And Rabbi Shimon, who spoke negatively against the Roman government, was sentenced to death. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, for whom we are going to celebrate next week the Hilula, there's much to talk about the Hilula. Everybody knows what's that. So Rabbi Shimon had to flee and to hide, and he hid in a cave for 12 years from the Romans until Eliyahu Navi came, and he said that Rabbi Shimon can come out because now the Roman decree has been null and void, because Caesar died, and therefore all his declarations became null and void. And there is more into this story, of course, but I added this to this Mishnah number 2. With that, we conclude the study of today. Tomorrow, God willing, we will continue with the study of this chapter in Pirkei Avot. Shalom.